This is The Blockchain Show. The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology. You're listening to episode number 79, featuring two interviews. Dave Hendricks of SeriesX and later, Matthew Sullivan of quantmRE.
Welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Blockchain Show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to wherever you are in the world. We are a global podcast and we have a wide and varied listener base. I'm currently in London and around the room we have representatives from
SeriesX here, Dave Hendricks. I'm the CEO of SeriesX and Vertalo, and I'm doing this call from Fairfield, Connecticut, where it's beautiful today.
Welcome, Dave. Thank you very much for joining us. Really interested to hear about SeriesX in general. Your background. You're one of those, I guess, rare people who make a living out of making technology a success. You've been surfing your own personal success wave in innovation and entrepreneurship, I guess, for a number of years. And so, tell us about SeriesX, but also tell us about some of the projects that SeriesX is running at the moment.
Super. I've got two companies. So I'm the co-founder of SeriesX, and SeriesX is a security token structuring as a service company. What that means is that we help companies that are trying to figure out how to issue registered securities that are compliant with SEC law in the United States. As you might be aware, that's a very thorny issue. There's a shift. ICO projects have been on the wane in the United States, but that has not dimmed the excitement around blockchain. And in fact, what we're focusing on are what are known as programmable securities or security tokens, which we think is going to be a very, very big market. And I'm also the CEO and co-founder of our subsidiary Vertalo. And Vertalo is a cap table for crypto. What we do is we handle the very, very important and necessary task of managing and maintaining stakeholder registries. A stakeholder registry is a listing of all buyers or participants in an investment related to a token. If you know what a cap table is, and the importance of maintaining a list of who owns something, their percentages, their ownership date, their prices.
Yeah, so if I'm in a startup organization and I've raised a bit of funding from initially friends and family, then I may go out to some investment firms for a little bit of extra money, and I guess everybody wants to know what their piece might look like in future. That's kind of what a cap table's there for, right? To record that, to record everyone's stake, record everyone's piece of the pie, so that when it comes to it, when the good times roll and things have taken off, then you can say, well, actually, this is how much I had in that stake. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, exactly that. But one of the things that's different between this in crypto and programmable securities and the old world of paper certificates is in the old world of paper certificates, you didn't ever take ownership really of your stock certificates. You probably never even saw them. And when you did want to sell, they'd go through this T2 process of custody and settlement process. But in the world that we know now, the world of tokens, people want to have control of their tokens and their private keys. And so those are usually maintained in wallets. What we do is we not only manage the stakeholder registry of who possesses the tokens, but we also distribute the tokens to wallets and then maintain them there and manage their lockup. If you're issuing a registered security, a programmable security or security token, if you have it, those tokens are often subject to what are known as lockups or restrictions. The old way of distributing tokens to wallets that don't have names or are not registered facilitated the movement of tokens between wallets and between holders. That's a problem. It's a violation of securities law. And so as more projects start going down the security token route, it's going to be more important for them to maintain compliance with SEC 33 and 34 related to restricted and lockup securities and also trading restrictions. Now, this may sound like a lot less fun than the kind of old, crazy days, but in
fire
fact,
up an ICO and see what happens.
Yeah. But in fact, a lot of people who own real world assets are very, very concerned with who owns equity and interest in their company, and kind of hell-bent trading is not necessarily their most important value. So we've developed this technology because we went through the process of issuing our own security token.
Right.
Now, this is the funny thing. Security tokens are probably pretty big meme these days. Everyone's like, oh yeah, everything's going to be securitized, and everything will be turned into a security token. And while I believe that's true, and I think it's going to happen, a lot of the people that are talking about it today have not gone through the process. We started going through the process of creating our own security token in September of 2017. Right. And what we learned through that process was that there were a lot of holes in the infrastructure. There were a lot of issuers or people building issuance platforms. There were a lot of platforms like T0 and Templum being built on the exchange side, and Open Finance and FinHaven, and a whole bunch of things either on the issuing side or the trading side. But there was no maintenance of the registry, investor relations and investor data management in the middle between those two parties. And so we had already been building a distributed ledger cap table since 2017. And we brought that technology to the market and are now building partnerships with issuers, broker dealers, KYC, AML partners, and exchanges. And we're doing work with and for issuers, meaning projects that are issuing security tokens to help them comply. So I hope hope that gives you a picture of of what we're up to.
So your kind of your USP, your unique selling point, you're kind of bringing together those worlds of technology. A lot of I guess blockchain businesses have started from a technology perspective and a great idea. You're also bringing the elements of fintech experience to the table, so you kind of are familiar with the financial marketing world, but also the kind of commercial law world and compliance worlds. You're kind of bringing those all into the kind of central pot. You've got the experience through your own trial and error and tribulation, but also building up the teams, building up your network to bring all that to one pot to assist other organizations who need to go through that journey themselves, right?
Yes, precisely. And, this is not something that we didn't learn about securitizing assets by creating a security token. I worked on my first securitization engagements and projects when I worked for a company called Arthur Andersen. Arthur Andersen was the world's largest accounting firm until it got taken out in 2000 with the Enron scandal. But prior to that, I worked on a number of securitizations, which meant securitizing assets. And also in the middle of the 1990s, I worked on the Resolution Trust Corporation project. That was securitizing real estate assets that had been mishandled during the savings and loan crisis in the United States. So I have a lot of securitization experience, especially building databases around securitized assets from a technical perspective. One of my co-founders is a former SEC attorney. He wrote the seminal paper with a couple of colleagues on alternative trading systems at the SEC. And then he went on to be a managing director at Credit Suisse in prime brokerage. That's Gautam Gujral. He's our co-founder and general counsel. And our other co-founder is a PhD in math who specializes in big data systems and cryptography. So our team is very, very experienced at industrial scale for managing assets that are both need to be secured and protected. And in the world of tokenizing, real life assets worth billions of dollars, it's very important not to be sloppy.
That's a little bit about SeriesX and the services you can offer through SeriesX. Did you want to talk a little bit about Vertalo and how you're working across those two organizations and what that's offering?
Yeah, so Vertalo is it's a stakeholder registry, and it came out of some work that we did in 2016 and 2017. Originally, it was what's known as a diligence platform. In my last company, we are raising $35 million in a Series D round. I co-founded a company in New York called Live Intent. It's one of the largest ad tech companies you've never heard of. Mm-hmm. And in our Series D, we are raising $35 million, and the VCs asked us to produce a list of everyone who worked at the company and all the documents that they had signed. We were able to do most of that, but not all of it. And as a result, we had to redo all of our employee documents. We got the round done, et cetera, but I never forgot about that. So after that experience, what I sought to create was a platform that would help organizations and entities like individuals attest to their relationship. And we started working on this in 2017, and we created a smart contract platform that basically, using a smart contract, it does an attestation of a time-bound event between two parties. Like, for example, that Mark and Ethan both work on this podcast, or that I am the CEO of Vertalo, or I bought a share of stock in SparkChain. We created this mechanism so that we could create ground truth about two parties agreeing on a time-bound event. So now what we did is we took that technology and we applied it to the cap table, to the registry, so that when you decide to purchase shares in a security token issuance, we have a hard agreement between you and the issuing party that transaction occurred. But it doesn't stop there. We also do KYC and AML compliance. So we have the end user, the buyer, certify their KYC status with the KYC provider. And then we're able to put that on chain, just the result, and then reuse that result for other issuances and other purchases. And what happens is that we give people clear ownership to events and assets that they have either performed or purchased using this smart contract. And so that's the basis, that attestation mechanism called a stint, STINT, is the signal innovation that Vertalo uses to create a registry, which is essentially a connection between an issuer or an exchange and a buyer. And this right here is critical, because that attestation also ties a wallet and other identity to the buyer. It enables the issuer to secure and distribute the tokens safely, and enables the purchaser to prove their ownership of the tokens or the programmable securities. And so this is a very, very important, but probably a misunderstood element that people need to understand, that they need to have proof that they own something. And so that's what Vertalo does. And because of this, and because we've been working on this for longer than a year, we got a little bit of a head start, and people are just coming to us and said, hey, can you manage our stakeholder registries? Because we just don't have this capability.
Yeah, I was going to ask, that kind of what has your roadmap been, and have you got many organizations kind of using this in anger at the moment?
Well, since we came out of stealth and started talking about this, our phone has basically been ringing off the hook. Most projects in the United States have realized now that they cannot do an ICO, and they can't do a SAFT. They need to do a registered securities offering under Reg D, 506C, to get technical.
Technical, yeah.
And if you're doing a Reg D 506C issuance, which is a registered security issuance in the United States, you also need to manage, you also have a compliance burden. And you can't just throw this stuff into a spreadsheet You need to notify your stakeholders. You need to transfer documents to them. You need to be able to communicate with them. And you also need to be able to send their tokens to a registered wallet. It can't just be to any wallet, because you have to make sure that the buyer is actually the owner of the wallet. Otherwise, you've got anti-money laundering problems or KYC problems. And so those are the problems that we're solving. And because of that, without another solution on the market, which has our kind of attestation engine on it, people are coming to us because they don't really have a choice. They have to do this. It's something that's mandated by 80-year-old laws. So that's so put it this way: we have a lot of people that we're engaging with right now, and we expect to partner. By the way, for anyone who's listening, who's in the security token space or issuance space, we expect to partner with everybody in the space to facilitate the buying and selling, the trading of security tokens in a compliant way. And you need the eligibility to be determined at time of sale. You can't have a lot of latency in there. And so our approach makes determining eligibility for buying and selling security tokens very fast. Like as fast as it needs to be, not days,
Okay. Just as I do, casually browsing through your through both your websites, there's some information on the Vertalo white paper, which is sort of alluding to being a potential platform for improving that kind of HR process, the kind of certification of people's histories and working credentials, and using that to help assemble, I guess, the teams of the future. Is that something you're still actively pursuing and looking at?
So we have a lot of applications for our technology. And one of the things that we learned a long time ago was that by putting out your entire roadmap in a white paper, you are subject to plagiarism. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that the era of the white paper is going to come to an end. The white paper is an interesting approach for a protocol, especially an open source protocol that won't have any centralized ownership. Therefore, no intellectual property, okay, and therefore no enterprise value. But if you're creating something with intellectual property and enterprise value, about the dumbest thing you can do is to put everything you're going to do into a white
competitors paper. What you're going to do.
Yeah. And there are a number of projects that stole things from our white paper and started to implement them and use our language and use our approach to the market. And so, we had always been working on developing a distributed ledger cap table, but the first application that we focused on was HR and due diligence. And we decided after going through the security token issuance that the best market for our ledger would be the market that we had just gone through, which is the security token market. So we just said, let's focus on this use case. We're going to be, yeah. Well, the funny thing is, you can call it a pivot, but it's fundamentally the same thing. It's just we're just selling to a different market. Okay. And we can go back, and the great thing is we can go back to that HR market later. Yeah. The mechanisms are all the same, but this one's a lot more fun.
Excellent. So, what have you got coming up over the next year? Then, what's happening in your worlds?
Well, I can't really broadcast the fundraise that we're starting right now, where Vertalo is starting a Reg D fundraise. We're a Cayman company, but we're raising money in the United States and Canada. And so that's kind of our focus over the summer, because the market opportunity for security tokens and for the registry, the Vertalo registry, is so huge that we need to run at it pretty hard. So we're going to be busy. We're busy building out our platform further. We're raising money against that. And the other thing is that I am about to do an airdrop for security token projects. So I've got you can call it a dialogue marketing approach, but what I'm doing is I'm going to use our Talos token to help people learn how and why they should be using our platform. And so for projects that have issued a SAFT or they're issuing a security token, I'm offering them incentives in the form of our Talos token to come and get their project onto our platform and learn about how to comply so they can stay within the boundaries of U.S. securities law. And so we're going to be kicking off that project soon. And then we'll be launching the platform for, kind of more public signups for, projects that we don't hand choose, probably in late Q3 or early Q4.
Okay, cool. Now you mentioned obviously your focus and prime kind of use cases is assisting organizations, stay compliant with the SEC. Compliance regulations. Do you, being a former resident of London yourself, and like I am currently now, do you see this kind of application being applicable in other markets, in other regions of the world as well? Have you thought about that? Have you looked at that? Are you leaving that to other organizations to worry about?
Yeah, cap tables and registries of ownership are as old as writing. People have been maintaining ledgers of accounting ledgers, ledgers of ownership since people began owning things.
Yeah.
And this is why what we're doing is kind of fundamental. Being able to maintain a ledger and being able to communicate with the owners and being able to send them contracts, documents, notifications, consents, tokens, dividends. This is generalized around the world. We're starting in the US, but it's the same thing in China. I mean, it's the same thing in Japan. It's the same thing in India. Everywhere people want to know who owns my equity, and people who own the equity want to know when am I getting my dividend paid. And projects and organizations need to communicate with their stakeholders, and they need to file reports. And this is really, really basic and kind of table stakes kind of stuff that you need to have. So we're going to go global, but it's we can focus on the US for the time being and keep it simple, but we're going to go global.
I look forward to seeing you at a local London blockchain event or even a startup event in the not too distant future.
I spent a lot of time down in E1. Okay, so I think I'm probably going to be coming to Moorgate soon enough. So
okay.
Maybe we can meet down in the city sometime this fall.
Grab a coffee. Yep.
Curious about two things. American ICOs going overseas and Chinese companies, or Chinese government rather, banning ICOs. Do you have any take on those two?
I think that American ICOs going overseas to places like Malta or Gibraltar is a natural reaction to the enforcement actions by the SEC here. I understand if you think that you are a utility and you don't feel that you need to or want to register your security in the United States, that you would go and take your project elsewhere. I don't think that that's going to solve a long-term problem for those projects. I think that they will have difficulty trading their tokens in the United States because the exchanges won't run their issues here. And I think it'll be very difficult for them to repatriate if they don't plan ahead. Okay. And I don't think that the notion of shareholder rights or registering securities is going to go away because some people think it makes things a hassle for them. This is just, there's 80 years of law around this, and it wasn't done rashly. It was done because the ICO craze in the 1920s. So it was a big deal. As far as Chinese companies, I think China Xi has already, the president of China has already said that he believes blockchain is a transformational technology. Don't get blockchain confused with ICOs. Those are related, but they're not necessarily the same thing. Blockchain there's a lot of applications for blockchain, and fundraising is one of them. Okay, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see. I mean, and amongst all the noise of maybe cryptocurrencies, which obviously the first kind of big deal in blockchain, they're maybe in the trough of disillusionment themselves at the moment. You know, prices are low, and Steve Bannon started to promote Bitcoin. Where's he been for the past 12 months? And talks of some of the exchanges artificially inflating the price. So cryptocurrencies themselves, I see as being real in that trough of disillusionment. And sure, there is absolutely some real world applications for a cryptocurrency or two around the world. Maybe we just need to settle on one or two rather than the 10 to 15 different flavors.
We love cryptocurrencies, and by the way, in the ICOs that came before the STOs, they paved the way, and they were and the people who've been involved for years are truly revolutionizing things, and we are all indebted to them for doing this. But there are some projects which clearly they're not going to go anywhere, and there are other projects which are really cool. It's hard to let 1,000 flowers bloom, as they say.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased to start actually see this year, and clearly in 2017 there's a lot of hype, became kind of mainstream for a lot of people. It's in the BBC News pages or the front of the NY Times every day, or certainly every couple of days over the past year. It's now kind of turning into more blockchain. Blockchain is starting to be, I guess, and blockchain applications and solutions starting to become real things rather than just the promise of an ICO and maybe a theoretical white paper. So that's really exciting for me. I think really exciting for the show that we're able to observe this change of times. The hype is dying down a little around some of the early stuff, but the real life applications are starting to come out.
Yeah, and after you see with Coinbase buying a broker dealer, for example. The reason is that the retail market for buying cryptocurrencies is a lot smaller than the B2B market for issuing programmable securities on the blockchain. It's just there are more real world assets waiting to be securitized than there are Bitcoins. Okay. Yeah. So the two can completely coexist. It's just retail cryptocurrency investment is a different thing than using the blockchain to secure ownership of assets. Just slightly different.
Well, Dave, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. It's been great to talk to you and understand what's going on in your world. Is there anything else you want to get across to us before we wrap up?
No, this is great. Thank you so much. And if anyone's interested, they can always reach out to me at dave.hendricks at Vertalo. That's VERTALO.com. And I hope to hear from your listeners. Yeah,
we'll certainly we'll get your links up on our website and on our podcast notes. We usually try and do a good job of that. And maybe we will hook up later on this year if you're in Moorgate for a coffee.
See you soon, guys. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dave.
Ledger Wallet is a smart card-based Bitcoin hardware wallet bringing maximum protection level to your Bitcoins without sacrificing usability or control. Find the link in this episode's show notes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Blockchain Show. Today we have a very special guest, something new, something different. Matthew Sullivan is on the show from quantmRE. Welcome to the show. It's your first time. If you could briefly introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about what you're doing with blockchain, just to get started.
Thank you, Ethan, and it's a pleasure to be on your show. So what we're doing is we are helping homeowners get out of a particularly difficult situation that many of them find themselves in. And that situation is where you are sitting on a large amount of equity in your home. And you find that when you come to try and cash that in, and when you go to the bank and they say, I'm afraid you don't qualify for a loan, then what do you do next? We looked at some statistics the other day, and there's literally trillions and trillions of dollars locked up in people's homes in equity. And many of those people can't unlock it. They can't get access to the value that's in their homes because either they don't want to take on more debt or they simply don't qualify to take on more debt. So that asset, all that value, which could in many cases, they can't get their hands on it. Yet at the same time, they're struggling because they can't afford to send their children to college. They can't afford to pay their mortgage in some respects. If you're a senior and you've spent your entire life paying off your mortgage and you're sitting on this asset, the only way that you could potentially get some of that cash that's yours is to take out a reverse mortgage. So one of the real big problems that homeowners have is when they've built up this value, they have to go back to the bank on bended knee and try and get some debt. And what we do is we solve that problem because we buy a percentage of the value in people's homes. So we don't lend you money. We say to you, if you have equity that is part of your home, if you own some of that equity, we will buy some of that equity from you, and we will write you a check, and you can spend the money on whatever you like, and there's no interest payments, there's no monthly payment. What happens is when you sell your house, and you can take 30 years to sell your house if you like. There's no pressure for you to sell it, in the next few years. When you sell your house, remember that a percentage of that house is ours. So when you sell it, then we get our money back at that point, and we share in a percentage of the increase in value if your house has gone up. So really what we're doing is we're saying to homeowners, this is a completely different way of releasing the value that's in your home, where you don't have to pay us back until you sell your house. There's no monthly payments, there's no interest. You don't have to spend it on a remodeling. You can spend it on whatever you want. So we're creating this sort of freedom for people to release the locked up value in their homes. And the way that we do that is by utilizing blockchain technologies and tokenization. Because we take those assets, those real estate assets that we've purchased, and we then use those assets to back tokens that can be used as a cryptocurrency. So the next problem that we solve, and this is a real problem that prevents cryptocurrencies really from becoming mainstream, is that people don't really know what they are. They don't know what they're backed by. It's this crazy sort of concept of computer programming language. How can that possibly be valuable? But if you back a token by something real, like real estate, then we solve another problem, which is being able to use all of the amazing benefits that tokenization and the blockchain brings us, but back it by something that people understand. Now, that was a very, very long answer to a very simple question you asked me. So, I know I've covered a whole lot of points there.
Yeah, a lot of people are probably hesitant to jump right in because I'm sure, specifically in the States, they probably remember the housing bubble crisis. Everyone was crazy about real estate investing, and a lot of people got burned. A lot of people have done the reverse mortgages like you talked about. So there's a lot of distrust with the traditional models. That's why I'm so excited to hear all of what you guys are working on with the tokenization. I'm just kind of curious, what do you see as maybe some hurdles to get the public en masse involved in your project, kind of educating and building trust?
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge. I mean, the biggest, the biggest challenge for us really is when you try and disrupt something that is as entrenched as housing finance, then naturally people are skeptical. So the biggest thing for us to gain is the trust of the public and get them to understand that this is not something that is something that they really should understand and believe in, because it's their money. And I think really the message that we're trying to get across is that house financing is incredibly inefficient and is dominated by the banks. And what blockchain and these types of technologies do is really allow people to bypass the banks and to access other pools of capital. So if we can explain to people how it works, then I think we can get them to understand that it is entirely logical that they should have access to the value that's locked up in their home. It's illogical that they should have to go and borrow money against something that they already own. So the first thing in terms of education is to get people to acknowledge that this is, back to front. If it's your money, you should be able to access that. You should be able to sell some of your assets, some of the stuff you own, without having to sell it all at once. And the biggest problem for people is if they want to gain access to the value of their home, they have to sell their house. And people don't want to sell their house if they want to live there. They want to sell a piece of it. So I think that's the biggest challenge going forward is going to really be to get people to understand that this is something that is happening. Now, historically, the team that we have in our company has originated over $250 million worth of these types of assets. So the good news is we have done this before, and we've done a significant amount of it before, and we know from our historical experience that there is an enormous amount of pent-up demand from homeowners for this option. So the good news is that the momentum's already there, and the education process started about 8 to 10 years ago when shared equity was first launched. But one must not underestimate the challenges that are involved in doing something as seismic as what we're trying to do. Not only in terms of house financing, but getting people to understand on the cryptocurrency side that the cryptocurrency that we're creating really has value and really can be used as payment and as a mechanism for transferring value with trust. Yes, and those are some of the challenges. I mean, those are, and then they're not insubstantial.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole volatility problem of cryptocurrencies, it sounds like your token is really going to solve a lot of that because, I mean, houses don't usually, if anything, they go up in value, I would assume.
The thing that we do is we provide predictability. The big issue with cryptocurrencies at the moment is that they have no predictability. They're volatile, they're unpredictable, and it's very difficult to price unpredictability. So, but what we have is if you base our token on a pool of real estate assets, and you know what each and every one of those assets is, where it is, what it's worth, then that makes it more predictable. And it still will fluctuate in terms of the value because all assets, whether it's real estate or stock market or bonds, they all fluctuate. But if you know roughly where the top and the bottom is, that makes it much easier to predict what the value of our token is going to be. And if you take the guesswork out of it, then it's a bit like the dollar. You know that the dollar fluctuates compared to other currencies, but you know where the edges are. And I think that's what we're really going to bring, because we can't predict what house prices are going to be next week, let alone in 5 years' time. But we do know that they move slowly, and we do know that there are signals that they give us. So house prices don't all suddenly collapse overnight. They move very slowly and in a very predictable way. So what we're bringing is predictability to the token. And once you've got predictability, you can then start banking on it because you have a much better idea where it's going to be, at a certain point in the future.
Interesting. It's because I'm fascinated by how these ecosystems are created. One day they didn't exist, and then now they do, and it's immutable and it's on the blockchain. And
they did. The critical thing is that they were always there. What the blockchain, the technology has done is to simply allow the pieces to start moving around.
There it is. And so, say somebody has a house and they're new to all of this. Can they take advantage of your system?
Yes. So I think your question really is about is about access, and it's about adoption.
Yes.
So in other words, do you have to completely understand how the blockchain works and be a rocket scientist to be able to go to our platform and release some of the equity in your home? And the answer is a resounding no, because the thing about technology, if it's used properly, it should make your life easier. And what it shouldn't do is create barriers to entry and create some sort of exclusive club where only people that are technical can enjoy the benefit. So the benefits that we're trying to deliver is to enable people to unlock their own money without having to borrow more. And so because of that, we're using the blockchain and technologies to break down the barriers to make it as easy as possible for them. So that means that the process of these for homeowners is to go to our website and fill in a form as if they were filling in any other type of online application. They don't need to understand anything about the blockchain or tokens or cryptocurrency. The process is, tell us how much your house is worth, tell us how much debt you have on it, and then we can do a rough calculation that will let you know how much we think we could release for you. If you want to go to the next stage, give us some more information, and then we can make a bit of a more in-depth analysis. And then what we'll do, if you want to continue, is we'll send an appraiser to your house who will give us a precise value of your house compared to what automated systems can do. So we know at the point that we make the agreement with you precisely what your house is worth. Then there's some old-fashioned tech involved, such as signing forms that you would do as a homeowner. And then we would send you the value of the piece of equity that you sold to us. So that is completely outside of the blockchain for everybody. No one needs to be a technical wizard to be able to understand that. It's the same as applying for a mortgage or applying for a credit card or applying to get your carpets cleaned. It's a very straightforward process that everybody understands. But what happens behind the scenes is that we take that asset, and that asset then goes into a pool, and we then start wrapping our technology around it so that that asset can then become tokenized, so that it can represent an asset that sits behind the tokens that are flying around in the sort of cryptocurrency world. And that universe can be a completely separate universe for the homeowner. They don't need to understand that to benefit. But what happens is people that want to buy cryptocurrency tokens that are backed by these physical real estate, when they buy those tokens, the money that they spend on buying those tokens goes into this pool, and that money is used to purchase the interest in people's homes. So that's where the two worlds collide. But you don't have to be a cryptocurrency specialist or understand anything about blockchain to be able to release the money that's locked up in your house.
That is very good news. Essentially, you're democratizing real estate with equity-backed tokens.
That's the net effect, exactly. So what happens is we say, first of all, you're a homeowner, you want some money, so we can do that for you. The whole cryptocurrency world it's like page 5 of a 1,000-page novel. That's, I think, where we are right now. And I don't think people really understand yet the significant change to the way that we will do things that will be brought about by cryptocurrencies, because effectively cryptocurrencies allow you to transfer value without having to trust the other person. And it's also incredibly efficient. So let me give you an example. If you were to sell me something online, let's say that you advertise something and I wanted to buy a framed photograph of Enzo Ferrari, for example, that you happen to own. We would have a conversation over email. You would send me a picture of your photograph to prove that you had it, and we would agree a price, let's say $50. But then we'd have another conversation, and we'd play 20 questions. And you would say, I want $50. And I say, how would you like me to send it? Would you like me to send it through Venmo or through PayPal or would you like me to send you a check, or would you like to wire you the money? And then you say, well, could you wire me the money? And I'll go, well, I could wire you the money, but how do I know you're going to send me the picture? And you say, well, I promise I'll send you the picture if you wire me the money. So we have this sort of strange arrangement where we have to trust each other, even though we don't know each other. And that's what slows a lot of transactions down. And that's why a lot of people aren't able to, and this is not just in terms of selling, pictures of Enzo Ferrari. I'm just talking about commerce in general. That whole mechanism of the exchange of value, and that's why you have intermediaries like attorneys and escrow companies, because they're the trusted intermediary. So in our conversation, we would say, okay, well, my friend's an attorney, so I'll send him the $50. You send him the picture, and because we both trust him, he'll do the transaction. And that adds cost and time implications and makes it less efficient. So that's why you have all these trusted entities like attorneys and escrow companies. But what the blockchain does is it removes that requirement for trust. So if we have an agreement where the moment you send your picture or the moment that picture arrives at my house, then the money automatically is released to you. And there's nothing that either of us can do to stop that. So there's no way that I can back out of that transaction. And there's no way that you can back out of that transaction. And that transaction is recorded on the blockchain, which is this ledger system that no one can change. So it's there for eternity. And that means that I'm much more likely to want to buy your picture, because I know that if I press this button and allocate my $50, I know with certainty that that picture is going to arrive on Thursday. So in a very roundabout way, if you can imagine that on a much, much bigger scale, without having to have all of these extra layers like banks and institutions and foreign exchange companies. I mean, we need obviously the regulations, but the technology makes the flow of capital happen so much faster. And without that, without all those sort of roadblocks in the way, then commerce can suddenly come alive and the internet comes alive because people can trust the transactions. So that means that the value of cryptocurrency is central. That is the oil, that's the key that makes everything work in this new blockchain economy. So to have a cryptocurrency that people trust in terms of its value, you need to have a stable value. That's very important as well. So what we're doing is we're solving the problem of homeowners, but at the same time, by creating this cryptocurrency that is stable and predictable, that allows the whole blockchain economy to grow and to move to the next stage, which is mass adoption. So it's not just about democratizing investing. It's something so much bigger than that. It's the ability to really unlock commerce on an international basis, because if transactions can happen instantaneously and electronically, and each one of those transactions is trusted, then that's a massive change to the system that we have at the moment.
I really like the sound of that. On the other side of the equation, for the investors, say you're a renter, you don't own a home, could you still invest and take part in this ecosystem you're building?
Well, yes. I mean, if you're a renter and you don't own the home, obviously the landlord will get rather upset if you've sold some of his house without him knowing. So obviously, for you to be able to release equity in your home, we do like you to be a homeowner.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm joking. But if you are not a homeowner, yes, of course, you don't have to be a homeowner to buy the token. If you buy the token represents the value of those assets. If the value of those assets increases, and everybody hopes they do historically, houses go up and down in value, but over time, they do tend to outperform inflation by, a fairly significant amount. So if you were to hold these tokens and the value of the underlying assets went up, then naturally the value of the tokens would go up as well. So the token also happens to have this investment potential. And obviously there's absolutely no guarantees that the value of the underlying assets will go up. But if they do go up, and we can tell you what the assets are, so you can do your research to make your own decision as to whether you think they'll go up or not. This token, which not only is the fuel for the sort of tokenized economy, also could appreciate. So it's a bit like having, being paid in something that if you wait, it automatically goes up in value. You don't have to invest your money somewhere because the money itself automatically goes up in value. And again, I'd like to layer that with, a whole bunch of caveats about, being, not guaranteeing this as an investment and do your own research. And that's where one of the other questions you asked earlier about barriers, this is fairly and squarely a security offering. So when we launch this, it will be very much in line with all of the securities requirements in the United States and the other jurisdictions where we launch.
Yeah, I know that in the United States, the housing market has been rising for the last several years at least. But how is quantmRE going to prevent against investing at a peak in the market that we saw in 2008?
Yeah, well, 2008 was a very strange situation because the housing bubble, and it was a bubble, was fueled by debt. So people were buying houses with money that they didn't own, that they couldn't pay back. And in very simple terms, what happened was, as everybody knows, people would be able to, anybody could borrow money because the sort of restrictions and constraints that should have been in place were not in place. So there was this large debt bubble. And if people could borrow money based on a plot of land or based on real estate that was literally valueless. The difference with what we're doing is we're not lending any money. So we're not fueling a debt crisis. What we're simply doing is taking the value in someone's home that is theirs, that is paid off, that doesn't have any debt attached to it, and we're buying that, and we're giving them money for that. And so what that does for that person is that deleverages their situation. So in other words, if you're a homeowner with a mortgage and with $100,000 worth of equity, if we bought $50,000 worth of that equity from you and gave you a check for $50,000, you haven't increased your debt by $50,000. If you wanted to, you could pay your debt down by $50,000, or you could use that money to pay the mortgage. So what we're doing is we are deleveraging the homeowner, and we're deleveraging housing, which is the opposite to what caused the crisis in the first place. So that's the critical thing to get across, is that we're not just doing a rerun of the 07-08 crisis. It's the opposite. This is the solution to the crisis, because if people then could release value that was locked up in their homes, they probably would have been able to pay and keep up with some of their mortgages, which means they wouldn't have been forced into foreclosure. So this could have been a very, very important solution to homeowners if only it were available 10 years ago. The other thing about real estate, though, is real estate is a very localized asset class. So one piece of real estate in one county or one state is very different to real estate in another county or another state. They have individual localized dynamics. All real estate does not rise and fall at the same time. There are layers and layers of different types of real estate and different geographies, different asset classes. So what we're doing is we're focusing on single-family, owner-occupied residences in areas where we know historically there has been solid house price appreciation. So we're being very picky about the types of houses that we allow into our network. So there is a very tight origination process, and there is a very clear process that will not allow properties that are likely to fall in value or properties that are not suitable. There are layers of gatekeeping involved to make sure that the assets that go into our pool have been authenticated and valued as far as humanly possible.
It got me thinking about the LA housing market. It's pretty astronomical living in this area. And
it is. Yeah. But again, LA itself is a very large geography. If you actually break it down, some areas are outperforming other areas. Some areas are actually falling. Some areas are increasing. Some areas are static. So again, if you look at the sort of heat maps for real estate investing, you can be very specific and just pick certain zip codes or certain areas that you think will perform. And there's an enormous amount of data that's available to help us do that.
Wow. So what are you excited about moving forward with the project?
Really, the most important thing for us is the ability to do something that is on a large scale, that is not a sort of, excuse the expression, but what we're doing is not trivial. So the thing that excites us more than anything else is the potential impact that we can have on, potentially tens of thousands of people's homes, or not so much their homes, but tens of thousands of people's lives. And I don't mean to be trite about this, because it is, it is very important, because if people are sitting there in their homes and they have money that is theirs that they cannot access because they simply don't qualify for a loan, then there is nowhere for them to go. And you have these ridiculous situations where people have assets that are forced to sell their houses, just to pay off a car loan or something. So we bring a real solution to that. So the thing that excites us most is that we are using this technology, and there's all the engagement of actually building something new, but the end goal is valuable. It's something that is valuable to a lot of people, will continue to be valuable, and it's something that could, could change people's lives. And I don't mean that in a trite way.
Absolutely. And I'm only just now starting to realize the implications here. And for anyone listening, if you're at your computer, the website is quantum.one, QUANTM.
.1.one, yes.
Yeah, and I understand you also have a podcast. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about how we can learn more about your project and also listen to you some more?
The podcast that I started running about 18 months ago is called Hooked on Startups. So there's about 60 episodes there. That really was just exploring with some incredibly talented and clever people how they went from ideas to execution and what challenges they had. So I would recommend everyone should do a podcast. I know it's a ridiculous thing to say, but just the ability to have a conversation with someone for an hour or so, or however long these podcasts are, is fantastic, because you learn so much, and people on podcasts just are very willing right now to to be very open. And I think that's it's probably where we are in the state of where podcasts are, but people are very willing, and there's so much you can learn from, imagine having an hour of someone's time where you're literally just talking to them, and they're not distracted by phone calls or people knocking on their door. It's very much one-on-one time. So it's an incredibly valuable experience.
Yeah, it is. I think a lot of our problems could be solved if we just would sit down and talk to each other. That was great, and I'd like, maybe follow up with you in the future, see how things are going.
Yes, and Ethan, thank you. It's been such a pleasure being on, and I sadly, as you probably noticed, I could probably talk the hind legs off a donkey, as they say. But this is something that we are hugely excited about, and we should have the first phase of our platform is due to be live in early to mid-July. So just a few weeks away, people will be able to see what we're talking about. So that's exciting times for all of us.
Yeah, we will follow intently, and definitely everyone listening, go check it out. Matthew Sullivan, thank you again. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Ethan. The pleasure was mine. Thank you for having me on.
Are you looking for an easy way to buy Bitcoin or Ether on a safe, secure platform? Coinbase is the easiest place to buy and sell digital currencies. Sign up today as a friend of the Blockchain Show, and if you buy or sell $100 of Bitcoin or more, you'll earn $10 of free Bitcoin for yourself and $10 of Bitcoin to support this show. Join now using the link in this episode's show notes at theblockchainshow.com.
Thank you.
To learn more, visit theblockchainshow.com.